By the time Dino Breeder 3 arrived on the Game Boy Color, the series had already carved out a fairly niche place for itself in the world of handheld virtual pet simulators. The first game established the template: hatch a dinosaur, keep it alive, raise it into something formidable, maybe evolve it into something scientifically questionable, and hope you don't accidentally kill it by leaving it hungry for more than 30 seconds. The second game refined the fusion system, but stuck pretty closely to the same framework. The third entry is still undeniably a Dino Breeder game. It doesn't change all that much, but takes advantage of the GBC's hardware to expand the series' ideas a little bit, in ways the monochrome originals simply couldn't. At its core, number 3 remains the same pressure cooker, monster-raising sim the series has always been. There's a timed action system at the heart of it. In the lower portion of the screen, a little countdown bar constantly ticks away, demanding you choose the next command before the clock drops to 0. Feeding, training, battling, healing, cooling your dinosaur down when it's overheating, or warming it up when it's shivering, everything has to be done quickly. This urgency is still the defining trait of the gameplay. These creatures cannot look after themselves for even a moment, and Dino Breeder 3 continues to relish in that stress. The GBC's speed and color visuals make the whole thing feel more like a frantic, cartoony laboratory management game, rather than a grim struggle to keep a tiny green pixel blob alive. One of the most immediate improvements is the visual clarity. Happiness, temperature, hunger, fatigue, stats that you constantly had to monitor in the first two games, are now color-coded, and it makes more of a difference than you might imagine. Overheated dinos glow with a red outline, cold ones shiver in blue. Hunger is indicated with a bright yellow belly icon instead of indecipherable monochrome shading. Even the emotion bubbles, those critical one-word Japanese prompts that tell you what your dino wants, now appear with bold colors and larger sprites. You still need to read the language, but the requests remain simple, like hot, tired, itchy, and it's now far easier to interpret at a glance. The biggest mechanical leap comes with the egg system. Gone is the simple handful of starting eggs from the original game, and the even more reduced selection of the second. Dino Breeder 3 introduces a proper generational egg catalogue. You begin with 3 base species, but each has numerous color variants, recessive traits, and potential evolutions tied to the environment you raise them in. Previous games let you influence growth primarily through feeding and basic care. Here though, habitat matters. Humidity, light exposure, and even the era simulation chamber you choose, basically themed backgrounds with minor mechanical bonuses, all affect how your hatchling develops. This means you aren't just raising a dinosaur anymore, you're effectively steering its place on a branching evolutionary chart. A lizard-type egg can grow into something tanky and armor-plated if raised in a dry environment, or into a fast, frilled runner if kept cool and fed lots of insects. The GBC's color graphics make these evolutionary paths even more striking. The armor shines, frills ripple, feathers emerge. It's still very silly science, but charmingly so. The fusion machine, introduced in the first game and expanded on in the second, receives its biggest overhaul this time round. It's no longer a simple combine one species with another and see what happens. Number 3 prevents a full DNA grid system. After battling and training your dinos, you earn DNA fragments, tiny color-coded icons representing physical, behavioral, or elemental traits. Combining these lets you sculpt very specific hybrid creatures. If you wanted a tiny flying reptile with a massive defense stat, you can do that. If you want a rhinoceros-scaled ankylosaur that spits venom out, it's probably not legal in any timeline, sure, but the game lets you try. The real joy does lie in the experimentation too. The DNA machine now displays probabilities for each potential mutation, giving you a kind of hint, or you could even interpret it as a warning, of what might emerge. Some hybrids are majestic, whereas some are just disasters. Some look like they crawled directly out of a child's fever dream. The series has always been kind of playful with the biology, but this time round it really leans into the outright absurdity of the whole thing, and the game is better for it. Battling, unfortunately, does remain the weakest aspect of the series, though it's at least mildly improved this time. The simplistic cycling number mechanic where you mash A to stop a roulette of digits and hope that you get something higher than your opponent still forms the basis, and is a letdown. But now, at the very least, it's not completely luck-based. This roulette wheel is kind of influenced by your creature's stats. A faster dino slows the number cycling slightly, a stronger one tilts the distribution of the numbers towards higher values, rare traits can bend luck in your favor. It's still shallow, but at least you feel like your training actually matters, which wasn't always the case before. The battles also look far better. Instead of two static sprites trading tiny pixel punches, dinosaurs might now hop or lunge or flap at each other with little bursts of color and impact flashes. There are even environmental arenas, simple palette swaps and background images, sure, but enough to give battles a little bit of flavor. Progression is smoother this time around. In the original game, losing a dino meant a harsh game over screen, followed by immediately just picking a new egg with no lasting consequences. The sequel softened this approach, but Dino Breeder 3 finally gives your efforts long-term meaning. The game now maintains a persistent research log that stores DNA, kind of like a Pokédex. The evolutionary data is there, the fusion results, and even the battle records. Each generation you raise contributes to this encyclopedia. The goal becomes broader than simply keeping one pet alive like it's a Tamagotchi or something. You're building a library of prehistoric biology, piece by strange piece. One of the more surprising additions is the new fieldwork mode. Occasionally, the doctor guy sends you out to gather materials, berries, fossils, stone fragments, or even lost eggs. This is done through short, simple minigames, pressing the right buttons to avoid obstacles, tapping rapidly to dig, timing jumps across small chasms. They're not deep, but they do break up the cycle of feeding, training, battling the series has always leaned on. And crucially, field missions earn rare DNA fragments used for high-tier fusions, giving them actual meaningful purpose. Speaking of the Doctor guy, yes, Dr. Matsunaga is somehow still alive. I remember Dino Breeder 2 joked quite a lot about his improbable longevity, shall we say, and 3 really doubles down on this. He's now depicted as this spry old man with cybernetic goggles and a walking stick that doubles as a scanner. Now, the game never explains this, but then it's Dino Breeder, it doesn't explain anything, and honestly, it doesn't need to. The tone of the whole game is so breezy and lighthearted that his immortality just becomes part of the series' charm. Taken as a whole, Dino Breeder 3, I think, feels like the first entry in the series that fully understands what makes its concept fun. The first game in the series was something of a novelty that came out in the mid to late 90s when handheld pets were all the rage. The second was really just an iteration of that, but the third one actually goes out of its way to expand the formula. The color hardware lets the creatures feel a lot more alive. These expanded evolution paths, while not infinite, do give you some degree of creative ownership over your beast. The fusion system finally reaches its bizarre potential, and the constant timer gameplay, once frustrating, now actually feels like controlled chaos instead of relentless punishment. Now look, it still won't convert anyone who dislikes virtual pet games, and I'm well aware that this video might actually be a lot of people's first exposure to this series, and yeah, it still struggles whenever it tries to instill RPG elements into the game. I wish it wouldn't. But for series fans, or anyone who likes the idea of rushing around to keep a tiny, chimeric nightmare alive long enough to turn it into an even bigger nightmare, Dino Breeder 3 is easily the most entertaining and polished the franchise has ever been.